Researching today's guest, I found myself feeling hopeful. In a world where it is almost too easy to be the tortured artist, Werner Bekker proves that a sustainable relationship with creativity is possible. His discography shows a beautiful balance between playfulness and sensitivity, finding its place comfortably next to his inspirations. Werner, if Damien Rice, Jack Johnson, Jason Mraz, Ben Howard, and Glenn Hansard arrived at the party, who would you pass the aux to first?
Jeez Louise, that's a hectic question. I love it. Thank you for the stunning introduction. That's awesome. I think it would have to be Damien Rice because he's sort of the one that came first in my life. So he's the first artist that really inspired me as a young boy and whose music I fell deeply in love with. So purely out of first come, first serve sort of basis, I would say he would go first.
Which song, if you remember, was the first of Damien's that you heard?
It was definitely Delicate. It's the first track on his album O. My dad was a massive fan. So my dad's friend introduced him to Damien Rice, and my dad rocked up at our house. And we sort of have always had a very big culture in my family of listening to albums from start to finish and sort of seeing them as a complete work. And I remember we were driving in the car. My dad was playing it for me for the first time. And I remember telling him that I didn't like it at first. And a week later, I was singing along to all the songs, which I think for a 6-year-old or 7-year-old is pretty hectic because the lyrics are super deep and dark and very sad most of the time. But yeah, I think something about that rang true within me.
You said that you were very young in terms of the lyrical content. So do you think you just connected with the vibe that came across? Did you absorb any of those themes, or was it just vibe first?
Yeah, totally. I think interesting question. I never thought of it that way. I love where you're taking this. My parents were very much artistic people and are very much artistic people, and so I grew up in a house where we were always taught to be aware of our emotions, and always encouraged to be as aware as possible of those things in our life and things that make us feel certain things. And I think one of the first sort of movie references I have, and where I think the whole understanding of emotions came from this movie, is Moulin Rouge. And my parents were like massive fans of that movie, and we watched it over and over and over again. And so I think that instilled from a young age an idea of what true love should mean, in obviously a very idyllic setting, but what true love should mean between two people. And so I've always had a fascination with, I would say, love and how that plays out within certain different relationships. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but also with your family, with your friends, whoever it may be, and sort of how those dynamics work. And so I think I was starting to get to know what that was about by seeing it visually and being allowed and acknowledged by my parents to have emotions that I might have, to cry when I might feel like I'm sad. And all those things sort of played up to the point where I could take these lyrics and, in obviously a very limited sense as a 6 or 7-year-old, make some sense out of them and sort of relate to a lesser extent.
Dude, it would seem, that your parents played a very big role, when it comes to you getting into music and becoming a musician. Mm-hmm. Whether it be through, them being very artistic on their side, whether it be through maybe, the music that they used to listen to, when you were still young as well. So now looking at the fact that you are a musician now at this stage, of your career, how much of a role would you say they sort of still play in the music that you make and the decisions that you make when it comes to, your career path and such?
That's awesome. Yeah, they definitely played a massive role in getting to this point. And I think to an extent still, I think everyone is always to an extent an extension of what they were when they grew up and what they saw around them when they grew up. So obviously you hear your parents' voices in your head when you make certain decisions. And obviously I share, especially with my dad, because my mom is a more visual person, a visual artist, and she loves music, but she doesn't really understand music that well. So she'll think most music sounds nice, which is cute. So I love sending her the tracks, but she doesn't really. She just goes, "Oh wow, that's such a beautiful song." There's no real input from her side. Whereas my dad, being a musician, really can comment on certain things, and I still send him songs when I record them now, and he'll comment on certain bits that he thinks I could do differently, or that I could try something new on. And I mean, the amazing thing, and where I do feel I'm extremely lucky, and I've got to give my parents so much praise for this, is that they always support me still. And there's always words of encouragement if I'm going a new direction, if I'm trying out something new, some new style. My dad is always on board and really wants to help me achieve the best that I can be within my career. So yeah, no, I'm very fortunate to have the parents that I have.
Culturally, when you look at, influence as well, from our parents, as you said, them being, artistic and such, are there any sort of other, external sort of influences that you may have gotten? And as I initially said, like culturally, I did notice that, firstly, the only Werner that I know as Timo Werner,
Oh, yeah.
which is his surname, obviously, Chelsea, ex-Chelsea player now.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously with you being Werner Bekker, I would assume that would be sort of like an Afrikaans type thing. And I did also see as well on your timeline that there was, one of your songs was on RSG, which is like an Afrikaans sort of, radio station type thing. Would you say culturally there are any influences or anything that you may have taken, coming from that sort of background in any way? Or is it just purely just, the art, that you got maybe from your parents?
Yeah, no, that's such a good observation, because I think so before, obviously, I listened to Damien Rice. My dad listened to a lot of local music, and especially Afrikaans music, and my dad was an Afrikaans musician himself. So I grew up with Afrikaans and Afrikaans music in this industry all around me. My uncle worked closely with Folk of Polisikar, and so all of that really did play into what I saw as a child. And I think, I mean, for a long time, I would say, what's called a bad relationship with my language and my culture, because obviously there are parts of it that you don't always agree with, and that you don't feel right, like sit right with you, or that you don't relate to. So I think a part of me writing solely in English is a way of escaping that part of my upbringing, that part of my culture. But then about a year ago, it was just this moment on, I think, like a Saturday afternoon or something. I was just sitting and thinking about some Afrikaans word, and I just thought, wow, it's such a beautiful word. And I sort of fell in love with the words in my language as well. And I do hope there can be a time in my life where I can write a bit more in Afrikaans. Obviously, my sole focus will always stay on the English side, but I do know that I love my culture, and there are so many good parts of it. So definitely have influences from our Afrikaans culture, like Koos Du Plessis and Koos Kombuis and Jan Blom. I mean, I remember as a kid seeing Jan Blom before he was famous, and Chris Chameleon and all those guys before they'd like really done very well. So growing up, like sitting around a campfire and seeing these legends perform was definitely an integral part of my love for music as well.
Man, I have to just say that is probably one of the most beautiful explanations I've ever heard in terms of why, you don't sing in Afrikaans. When you say the reason why you sing in English is to escape, or the beliefs or anything that you don't sort of, resonate with when it comes to your culture. Because I remember a while back, and I stand to be corrected here, I think I was talking to Zen Garden when they were on the show, and I think a lot of the members in that band there also, they have like an Afrikaans sort of background. And it's one of the things that came up as well in the conversation. And they were like, well, we write in English because, it's easier. So getting this sort of perspective from someone like yourself who's saying, for me, it was to escape, those beliefs and stuff that I don't resonate with. It's incredible, bro. I just have to get that out the way. That was really beautiful. Thanks for that.
No, thank you so much, man. I'm glad it resonated with you as well.
What do you think it would take to get you to write and record an Afrikaans song? Because I feel like your songwriting style could add such value to the Afrikaans community in terms of music, and you're in such like a good position to do that. So what's it gonna take?
I love that. That's cool. I don't know. I think it's all about inspiration for me, and so I think many artists will relate with the idea that sometimes you get inspired, or oftentimes you get inspired by other music or like other art. And so it's important for me to feel inspired by the language as well. So I think the journey has already started, and it will happen at some point, because like I mentioned, I had that moment. And one of my friends, Emil Swicher, just released a 3-track Afrikaans EP that is absolutely sublime. And so little things like that are starting to inspire me and starting to make me think will eventually lead to me writing more in that language. I think the basic idea is that I should just, the next time inspiration hits, I should at least try it. And it's like any skill, right? The more you try it and you try your hand at it, the easier it will become to do. I remember having a dry spell in writing 2 years or so ago, and all it took was for me to actually just sit down and try multiple days in a row. And after trying multiple days in a row, it started becoming a habit, and then all of a sudden it was easy again. And so I think the key there is just to start. So you have my word that I will start doing that.
Where were you, bro, during the MCAR sort of era?
Yeah, awesome. I was I remember doing the MCAR thing and like putting MCAR on every day after school from about grade 9. So I would say from about 15 years old. And it was still up when I was 18, I think. But I think the year after I graduated from high school, it went down. So I was sort of probably part of the last generation to be in that whole MCAR vibe. I remember my dad did one Rock Spider. He was a judge at one of the Rock Spider competitions. And I think that was the first time I heard the name MCAR. And yeah, I just loved it because it represented everything that I wanted to be. You know, as a kid, you look at musicians, and obviously I love Damien Rice and stuff, but I didn't think I was going to become a singer-songwriter. I thought I was going to be a rock star. You know, you think you're going to be, I was listening to Green Day and My Chemical Romance and all these like sort of punky bands. And yeah, that's what I thought I was going to do. So Rock Spider and the whole idea of like kids playing in bands and like playing in front of massive audiences and winning competitions and being on TV was just awesome. So I remember it from a young age, but I only really started getting invested into it when I was about 15 or so.
Sure. When it comes to performing, you're someone who has had experience as a solo performer and a full band. I want to know how the two experiences compare. And I also want to know what the differences are in the audience reception.
I love doing both. For me, it's harder to do it alone, but it also depends on the setting. Obviously, it's nice to have your friends on stage with you because oftentimes, well, with me, I've been fortunate enough to always play with people that I gel with very well and that I can be friends with. So it's amazing sharing music with them in that sort of setting. And in fact, I had a band show last night and it was just amazing because I don't get to do so many of them, unfortunately. So yeah, they each have their perks. I would say as a singer-songwriter, the solo shows, if the setting is right and if people are sort of in the right mood to sit down, drink a glass of wine and really take in the lyrics, I've been fortunate enough to have a couple shows like that, then it's probably my favorite way of performing because the people can really, really take in and I can really feed off of the audience as well. So it like becomes this very deep sharing moment where the artist really opens their heart. It's like they're fucking opening a cavity in their chest and people can just look in. And then on the band side, I think it's magical when you have a larger audience that is slightly more rowdy or you are in a slightly more dingy bar, then that's awesome because they bring a lot of energy to the set as well. And that gives me a lot of energy and it makes everything sound fuller and people can dance to the songs that lend themselves to that sort of vibe. So those are like the two perks on both sides. I would say I still prefer the solo if the setting is right. But I mean, if the show is big enough, I would always prefer to play with the band. I don't know if I answered your full question there.
What about the crowd? How do they respond to you in terms of your solo sets versus your band sets?
Yeah, okay, amazing. So the crowd usually in a solo set will be, like I mentioned, if it's the right setting, will be more receptive to feeling the emotions and really taking in the darker part of the music. So some of the songs, for instance, Withdrawal, sound fairly happy-go-lucky, but the lyrics are fairly dark. So in a solo setting, the crowd is more vulnerable, I feel, as am I. So everyone's in a very vulnerable state and it allows everyone to feel intensely. So most often I'll find that those are the shows where people cry at and where I cry in or start crying in the middle of a song I'd just written or whatever, especially if it's fresh. And that's what I love about them is the rawness. Whereas at a band show, people can still relate to the emotion and stuff, but there's sort of a little bit more of a barrier. And the energy it's a slightly more happy-go-lucky, let's have fun kind of energy.
Now, bro, you obviously, you've had a few months back, if I'm not mistaken, your TV appearance that you made on Espresso. That must have been nerve-wracking because, it's probably millions of people that are tuning in, in the morning to check you out and check out your performance and stuff. So how did you actually prepare for that, and make sure that you don't fumble? Because, I mean, the performance as well was incredible, dude. It was really good. Like, you pulled it off really well. So what did it actually take for you to execute it so well?
Oh, thanks so much, man. Thanks for that compliment. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been a fan of not over preparing. That being said, obviously, when you're going to do something like that, you do feel the nerves beforehand and you do go over your song or your songs multiple times. But over preparing can be just as detrimental as under preparing because you get stuck in your head and you start overthinking every single small little thing. And in that moment on the set when you're performing, it goes by so quickly that you constantly have to make yourself aware of the fact that you shouldn't like overthink every little thing that you do. You should kind of just focus on the words or just focus on what you feel like. So in general, I don't prepare too much. I go over the song a couple of times, but then I try and like incorporate stuff like breathing exercise and some vocal warm-ups and stuff beforehand, just so that I can settle into it and really not overthink it. And I think that especially on those sort of sets, the nice thing is you rock up like really early, and then you wait for 2 to 3 hours for your slots to come up. So you do have a lot of time to acclimatize to the whole environment, chat to some of the people working there, and do your sound checks and stuff. And by the time that you're actually playing, you've really sort of gotten over most of the nerves because you feel comfortable in that space.
So would you say that preparing for like a live TV performance would be similar, to performing, or rather to preparing, for like just a general live performance out at a pub somewhere?
Not at a pub. I would say it's more. I can liken it to when you're gonna do a festival performance or like opening for a big act, that sort of thing, where you are fairly nervous. A pub performance is, to me, is not really a nerve-wracking thing anymore. I think when I started out, obviously it was like every performance was nerve-wracking, but nowadays they are lots of fun and I love doing them, but they don't like give you that sort of nervousness that a bigger show does. So I would say I relate the two more to, well, the TV show appearance more to like saying playing Opi Kopi or something like that.
And as someone who's been to and performed at so many local festivals, what's part of your survival guide? If I was a festival beginner, what's one tip that you could give me to just survive the weekend?
Yo, I want to say loads of fucking whiskey, but that works for me. So especially before I go on stage, I won't drink a lot or anything before the show, but just before I go on stage, just have a shot of whiskey. For me, that works. But I think if you're just attending, I mean, the first 5 or 6 festivals I went to, I just attended because I love music so much. I think that's part of why I got into music in the first place, is that it's not just about performing it, but also seeing it being performed. And like I mentioned earlier, that sort of stuff inspires me to write as well. So when I see bands playing live or friends playing live, it really inspires me. So I think the most important thing for someone, a first-time festival goer, to remember is obviously your basics, like your tent. Drink a lot of water. That's a biggie. Just do it. Even though you don't want to, just do it. And eat at least one meal a day. If you do those 3 things, you should be fine. You might have some ups and downs. But yeah, so drink water, eat food, have your basics, and drink whiskey.
Solid. How was the burn, by the way?
Oh my gosh, did you see that? Okay, that's great. No, it was absolutely amazing. It was probably the best experience of my and my wife's life. I think I came out a completely different person, and I don't think I'll ever miss one ever again in my life.
Wow, like I've heard for a lot of artists, they sort of go through almost like an ego death. And like things change from then on. Do you think that you're going to take some of that and bring it into your upcoming music?
Yeah, I think after doing the burn, first of all, I think the main reason it's so inspiring is just the way everyone is allowed to be exactly who they want to be there. And that openness really allows for love between everyone. It's absolutely incredible being able to go up to a random person and say, "Hi, what's your name? Can I give you a hug?" And everyone just goes, "Of course." And you'll have 30-second hugs with random people all the time. And it sounds so weird when it's out of context, but when you're there, it just works. It just makes sense. So, I mean, the amount of sharing and acceptance in that space is just absolutely incredible.
Do you think that we're going to hear some of those things coming in through your music?
Yes, obviously. So it did definitely put a swing on things. I think the music that I'm writing at the moment, obviously it will only come out in a while. But there's a sort of a radical change happening and I really like it. I'm really optimistic and excited about testing out these new territories and trying out some new things genre-wise, sticking to the same sort of vibe, but really, I think tapping into the part of me and finding my sound even more. I think that's something that I always struggle with. I don't know if other musicians go through this. I haven't spoken to many people about this, but I've always, even since I started music, I love so many genres and I love so many artists that I sort of struggle to put myself into a category and try and find a sound for myself. And so with that said, everything keeps constantly evolving. So I often look back or look at the stuff I'm writing now, and then I look back and I think, oh, wow, is it too different? But I realize that I can't do that, because if I do that, I'm just going to inhibit myself from writing freely and sort of expressing myself freely. So yeah, it definitely changed the sound, and it's sort of hard now because I'm releasing an EP now, but the new stuff that I'm writing is a lot different from that. So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
I think it's perfect that you actually mentioned your EP there, bro. I think it's probably a point that we should definitely touch on at this point of the interview. What can we expect? Tell us just everything that you possibly can and everything that you're allowed to touch on as far as the EP is concerned.
Amazing. Yeah, cool. So we've released 2 of the songs, which was Side of the Wild and Run. We reinvented Run a little bit. It was recorded before, but so when I perform it live, I do the whole percussive thing on the guitar. And in the previous version, we left that sort of thing out, and because it was a little tricky to record the performance that way. So this time I decided I wanted to have it in and sort of sculpt the drums around the percussion that the guitar is doing. So I'm really amped about how that came out, and really just blown away by the feedback we're getting from everyone, and just want to say thank you to everyone who's listening to the song so far. And then we've got another single coming out on the 26th of August, and then a focus track with the EP at the end of September. So the EP is coming out in the end of September. It's 8 tracks, and basically we've released 2 singles, 1 more, and then there's 5 new songs coming after that. So yeah, really amped. Most of them are new. Yes, I think Run is the only older song that we redid on this EP. The rest are all new tracks.
Well, there's one thing I gotta know. What is the yellow goop in the cover art for Run?
That's tomato soup. And we chose that sort of, we thought of that artwork, my wife and I. So interesting fact, all the artworks for the singles and for the whole EP were just taken on phones at random occasions. The Run is probably the most posed one. We decided on that photo specifically because there's a line in the song that I really love. It says, "You dipped your finger in the pan when none of it was yours, little man." And I really like that line. And so we thought, well, that could be quirky and nice. And as you can see, it's post-burn. So I've got the fur coat on and no shirt, really still fresh in that mindset. And so all the other photos were all taken at like either parties with friends or like hikes on our phones. And we decided to keep it really chilled this time. Before, we always had either an artist draw something out or went for a proper photo shoot or something. But this time we decided, let's take it back to the roots and just like post stuff from my life and sort of keep it very honest.
So I have one very important question to ask, and that is, will you ever bring back the Spoken Open sessions?
Wow, I forgot about those. So actually, I'm a very honest person. The guy I did those with, that relationship didn't end very well. And yeah, it was from both sides. I just think it wasn't a good fit. And I think that was sort of a time in my life where we were starting to realize what sort of direction I have to go in, and sort of where the world was changing to a very content-based, like consumption-based sort of environment. And so I think it had its place, and it might come back. I mean, you're giving me great ideas here in this session, because fuck, that was awesome. I really loved doing that, and we had loads of fun just filming all those little sessions. Obviously now I think we'd be able to do it better, but yeah, it does remind me a little bit of a time in my life that was a bit rough. So I'm not sure, but yeah, maybe let's put a maybe on that one.
There's this quote, I'm not sure who it's from, but it says that you should always try to laugh in the places that you've cried. So it might be a therapeutic thing for you to revisit. And I really enjoyed it because you kept doing these very interesting locations and your music always suited the setting. It was very clever.
Thank you.
I'd look forward to it if it came back.
Amazing. Okay, I'll take your word of advice.
I would like to know, what is the difference between the Cape Town vibe and the Joburg vibe, since you've been in both?
Massive. Huge fucking difference. It's like a different country. I have a very soft spot for Johannesburg, just because when we were kids, we moved around quite a lot because my dad was a musician. We loved it, moving and like living in loads of places. And at one point we got a little bit stuck in the Free State for like 3 years, and that was not a vibe for any of us. We did not like it, especially in the small towns. It was too racist, and my family, we are not racist at all. And we kind of got shunned from the community because of that. So it was a horrible experience. And then we moved to Joburg after that, and that was the first time we lived in Joburg. Before that, we were always sort of outside of Pretoria and Cullinan, and always sort of small towns but close to cities. And then moving into the big city, this crazy ghetto city, was just, I don't know, it was awesome. I loved it. The people were super warm, and everyone welcomed us with open arms, and we felt at home for the first time in a very long time. And so Joburg has a soft spot for me, and the audiences there are less involved, I must say. That's one thing I love about Cape Town, is there are less venues here, which sucks a little bit, and the industry is a bit more geared towards partying and EDM, and that's cool. I mean, everything has its place. And I'm really enjoying EDM in the last while. I never thought I would say that ever in my life, but I'm actually starting to enjoy it. And so the industry is geared to a different sort of audience here. But when you do the sit down shows and stuff here, people are really amped to take it in and listen, and you find a lot more people do that here. I think it's just about how the two cities work, right? Joburg is a very fast paced, like, get stuff done city, and you go out and you do something and you quickly finish it so that you can get on with the next thing, or like go on with your job or whatever. Whereas Cape Town is very relaxed, and people here are used to taking in the scenery and not rushing to do anything, and sort of getting there whenever they need to get there. So yeah, I have mad love for both of the cities. I am currently really enjoying living in Cape Town, and I think the fact that the live industry, I mean, most of the bands that I see playing here, I mean, apart from the like normal markets and stuff where you see singer-songwriters, but most of the bands and stuff that are playing here are coming down from Joburg. So it's quite interesting. And even the Cape Townian bands are only playing when Joburg bands come tour here. So I think there's a massive opportunity in the Cape Town scene to sort of expand that whole part of the industry, and to there's a gap, I think, for musicians like myself, and I mean, all of the bands. I'm a huge fan of the underground sort of indie scene in South Africa, and I think there's a massive gap in Cape Town to start rolling out those events again, especially after COVID and now that everything's opened up.
Let's do a quick plug, bro. Best venue, for an artist like yourself in Cape Town, and the best venue for an artist like yourself up in Joburg.
Cool, love it. In Cape Town, definitely House of Machines. I find that always going there, the management's always super nice. They pay the artists well. And the people who go there like listening to the music and actually interacting with the musicians instead of just pushing them into a corner and just ignoring them. So definitely House of Machines here. And then in Joburg, Pretoria side, I'm gonna have to always say this, and I genuinely do think this, and it's Railways Cafe, and I think it will always stay that way, because they have all the time for musicians. They have been doing what they do for years. And I know things have slowed down there a little bit with COVID and everything, but I think magical things are about to happen there, like they always have. I have the biggest respect for TJ and how they run that venue, and the amount of love that pours out from that venue is absolutely insane.
Shout out to both those venues, dude. I think it's really incredible when you get that sort of relationship where, an artist enjoys, playing at a certain place, and obviously the management there is really amazing and such. And I'm really hoping as well that from that, anyone that's listening to this, does also head out and check out those places there. But I also want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier, bro, about, family and relocating and such. And something that you mentioned, earlier on, that you mentioned her. It was, I think the first time was when with the artwork, that she had a hand in your artwork. You mentioned her when you guys were speaking about Burn. So how much of an impact does your wife play in you being an artist? Because it really seems like, she plays a very major role.
She does, dude. She's like my muse. Definitely. I mean, she's so good. She's got a good ear. She's got a good eye. She's basically one of those people who's just good at everything. It's a bit irritating sometimes because I'll record something and then, in the back of your mind, there's this one part of the song or something that's just not right, or it's just not up to scratch, and you sort of know it, but you like ignore it. So you just play, and then I play the song, and then she'll say, yeah, it's amazing, but like she can't lie. And then she'll say, but this part, like, that doesn't work. And then I'm like, I get a little frustrated and stuff. And then she's like, well, why are you getting frustrated? Because I'm just like fucking telling you what what I think. And then I'm like, no, I get frustrated because you're saying what I was thinking in any case. And yeah, so I mean, she plays a massive part in inspiration, in like challenging me, in helping me when I fall down. I mean, yeah, she's a rock. I couldn't do it without her. I don't know how I did it without her. And I think, in fact, if we had all the data, if all of my life could be put up into like points of data, you would see a massive incline in my professionality and my career growth from the moment that I met her. So yes, definitely I couldn't do this without her.
I was actually going to follow up by asking, if this is something that was, if this was the case, from the onset, before you guys got married. But as you said, bro, like, the moment that you guys met, everything just started going up. So that is really impressive, bro. I'm super stoked for you. Like, even when you're just explaining it, bro, your voice just lights up. It's cute, man. Shout out.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I remember when I met her and I was like talking about my career and stuff. I like one of the things that I told her is just before we started dating. So we were friends for about a good 6 to 8 months before we started dating. But I told her, listen, like, my music always comes first, that typical artist thing. Like, what a douchebag. And and then she said, no, that's totally chilled and stuff. And then at one point, I like told her, like, I'm just getting frustrated with the industry and stuff. And she's like, you're not doing enough. And she's like, just super honest, and really forced me into realizing that if I want to like continue doing this for a long time, I'm gonna have to put in a lot of effort and really get off my ass and just fucking get up and do it.
You really killed me, bro. And you're like, what a douchebag. Yo, I laughed, bro. And it's muted, so you obviously couldn't hear it, but I died. Memes.
I've seen you say that most of your compositions start out with coffee and writing. Mm-hmm. So how do you make your coffee and how do you make your songs?
Yeah, awesome. So I love a strong cup of coffee. If there is no milk replacement, I drink black coffee without sugar. I don't drink any sugar. And yeah, that's about it. I'm very easy to please when it comes to coffee. As long as it's decent and it's not like I don't like re-coffee. Like chicory is not my vibe. But if it's a decent cup and there doesn't have to be any frills or anything. I mean, I love oat milk, and that would be great if you add oat milk. But if you don't, black coffee is perfect. I think it's just the like sort of comforting feeling of a cup of coffee. And so yeah, when I write, mostly these days, I mean, when I was younger, I would always write in the early hours of the morning, but that like you really realize very quickly that is not doable for a long period of time, because you wake up groggy. And I mean, let's be honest, in South Africa, almost every artist or musician that I know has some form of a day job, and so that just messes with everything. So I ended up, after studying, I ended up sort of making it a bit more structured. And so these days when I write, I do start feeling inspiration and I write down notes. And then when the time is right, when I have a little bit of time, a couple of hours or so, I'll sit down and usually start playing something on the guitar or piano and find something that I feel suits the mood that I'm in, even if it's just a couple of chords, and then start humming along to it and see if like a lyric or two pops up. And then after that, like has started, then I'll sort of go back to my notes and see what sort of things have I written down in the last month or two that maybe could work in that song. And the annoying thing is I'll often like I usually work in the afternoons and early evenings as a music teacher. So I usually find that I'll start the whole process in the morning but get nowhere, and then like an hour before my first lesson, I'll all of a sudden have this massive bout of inspiration and just start writing up a storm, and then I have to stop midway through because I have to start working. So it's a bit of a frustration sometimes. But yeah, that's my sort of process. I don't overthink it. Sometimes the lyrics come first, but usually it starts with me like just tockling on a guitar. Some mingles there for you.
While we on the coffee there, bro, and your creative process, what like besides the oat milk, bro? You know, how many sugars do you take? Obviously, you like it black. You know, what is like the holy grail of like a coffee cup, bro, for you? What does it entail? How many sugars? How much milk?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. So, first of all, as big a cup as possible, like massive is better. And I drink it like while it's still scorching hot. And I don't know how I do it. People always are amazed by how quickly I drink scorching hot coffee, but I do. Yeah, so no sugar. If you have a strong coffee, 1 teaspoon is enough. If it's instant coffee, 1 teaspoon. Like I like the Nescafe espresso. 1 teaspoon heaped, and then yeah, just a tad of milk, not too much. Like I said, I like it bitter and strong and dark, and like I mean, I listen to Damien Rice. What do you expect?
Are you one of those like very specific people when it comes to coffee? Because you mentioned you don't like Greek coffee. Does it have to be sort of like, you know, made by a professional type thing where I don't want to have anything that's like off the shelf? It needs to be like Arabica beans or something like that from Brazil and Ethiopia and all this, or it's not really, you know,
No,
that
I
deep.
mean, I'm not that fussy. I'm not that fussy. Like I said, I do instant coffee most of the time. We do have a nice little coffee machine at home. And my Monday evening, my last lesson in the evening, his dad always makes me a nice espresso. So, I mean, I love that. And I do like a good coffee or an Ethiopian coffee or whatever if I find it. But it's not like I'm going into the shop every month and thinking, oh, cool, what coffee am I going to try this month? I just like coffee.
No, it makes sense, bro. That's pretty much it for the coffee talk on mine. I just wanted to follow that up, you know, since you guys were talking about the coffee. But lessons, bro. You keep mentioning, you know, lessons. At the end of the day, a lesson. Dive into that a bit more. Obviously, we know you as the artist and such. And you also mentioned prior to this that, you know, obviously in South Africa, you have to balance out the music thing with the 9 to 5 sort of job. So what would that entail? Like, what does that look like for you?
So, I mean, I do teach. It's not my first choice, but when I started off, my dad well, coming from a musical background, sort of knew that I had to do something because he didn't. He didn't do the whole teaching thing or any side hustle. So he encouraged me from the start to start doing that. And at first, I wasn't very keen on it, but I did it anyway because I had to afford certain things. And then later, I started enjoying it. And I must say, it's not that I hate doing it. I really like teaching. It's awesome to see how other people get inspired by your music as well and by you as a teacher. And so that's great. And I hope that like it shows in the lessons as well and that they can take a lot away from that. And yeah, I mean, as a 9 to 5, as 9 to 5s go, I think that's a pretty nice one for me because it's still involved with music. I can still, um, sharpen up on my own skills within those lessons because you're constantly doing the sort of basic rudiments and stuff over and over. And in that way, also, I have my mornings free to record and write. And yeah, it works really well for me.
Please, can you tell us about your luthier course with Meagan? And for those who don't know, can you please just explain what luthier is?
Okay, cool. Luthier is basically the making, I think, specifically of stringed instruments like violins and guitars and cellos and those sorts of things. I think it's specifically those. I'm speaking under correction here. So I've always had a love of making things. Obviously, that's why I write songs as well and why I create music all the time. And so that sort of passion for making things and my passion of music combined, I always dreamt, especially when I was about 20 years old, of building my own guitar. I started watching YouTube videos of people doing it, and I tried to find a luthier in South Africa. And I mean, there's the guys from Kissimmee in Cape Town, and they offer a course. And then there's a couple of guys in like Gauteng in Northwest, but they weren't very active. So the one that I found that was really active was Murray, and he was posting on Instagram quite a lot. So I messaged him on Facebook, I think, and I just said, listen, I want to learn how to build guitars. Do you know of a place where I can do that? And he said, yeah, I can teach you. And he gave me the rate, and we basically started. And the first guitar that I built with him, I still have it. I love it. It took me quite a while to do that because I was going through loads of shit in my life. And so I would start and then stop and then start and then stop. And that sort of makes it extra special to me because it has a lot of like the hardest parts of my life. Well, loads of the hardest parts of my life were in that whole phase of building that guitar. So it's awesome. I really love it. And I sort of completed it just after Anya and I started dating. So that's like a beautiful touch to it as well. And then after that, I built a guitar for my stepfather as well. My mum wanted me to build one for him for his birthday. So I went to Murray again and did a second one. And on the side, then I built 2 ukuleles by myself, just from like the skills that I'd learned and stuff. And yeah, just love still doing it. I just don't have enough time. I'm actually currently refurbishing my father-in-law's guitar, and it's taken me like 8 months just to sand the thing. So I must get back into it a bit more.
And when it comes to your guitars, you have such a beautiful collection. I've seen you with a Breedlove and obviously your custom Kun. And I've also seen you with a Fender Jagstang and even a President. So tell us about that collection. What made you, how did those all come into your life?
Jeez Louise, I didn't know there was anyone who knows all my guitars. That's incredible. Wow. Okay, yeah, so there's like cool stories for all of them. So I'm gonna try and do it quickly. The Breedlove is the first guitar I bought for myself. My dad had a Taylor and has a Taylor, and I always used to play on that, but I realized fairly quickly that I am gonna have to have my own guitar. So I made a bit of bucks from a couple of shows, and then I went to this guy. He was a pastor in a small little town outside of Joburg. I can't even remember the town's name, and he was advertising it on Gumtree. At the time, Gumtree was still a thing. And I went there and I saw the guitar and I played on it, and it was a steal. I think I paid 6,000 Rand for the guitar. And then 2 years later, Breedlove like exploded, and the model that I have was like 3 times the price all of a sudden. So I was very lucky to buy it at that price, and I love it to bits. It's still my main gigging guitar. The Kun I play on very often when writing. It's sort of my go-to for writing, and I use it a lot in recordings just because it has such a nice finger picking tone. So especially for like adding little layers into songs, it's my go-to. The Jagstang I also bought more or less around the time I bought the Breedlove, but I didn't have the money to buy it. I saw it at Ronnie's All Bang and Strum. It's one of my favorite guitar shops in Joburg. And I begged my dad, and he said, okay, cool, he'll buy it for me, and then I just pay him back over like a couple of months. And so we did that, and I've never regretted it. I love that guitar so much. I teach with that guitar fairly often because it's just great. It's nice and versatile. And then the President is the newest edition. It's a vintage guitar. It's from 1963, and it's actually such a special story. My great-grandfather bought the guitar for himself at a local import business in Brits when he was in his 40s or something. And so he bought the guitar, and he always used to play it. Apparently on Christmases he would go sit with the workers. The family couldn't find him anywhere, so he was sitting with the workers and just like playing Christmas songs with them. And so then from there on, the guitar went to my dad's cousin, who is the cousin who worked closely with Fokov Polisikar. And so for a couple of their tours, they took the guitar with them, and it's featured in one or two of their music videos as well. So it's been played by Johnny as well. And then like a year ago, that I call him my uncle, my dad's cousin, he called me and he said, listen, the guitar is just gathering dust there at his place. And up until this point, I hadn't known about the guitar. And he said, he feels like I'm the one who should be inheriting the guitar because it's him and my dad's grandfather who owned the guitar. And he thinks I'm the right person to inherit the guitar. And he thinks it's about time that I come get it. So then when we moved to Cape Town, he lives in Durbanville. We went over for a braai, and he told me loads of stories about the guitar, and very apprehensively parted from it, and sort of like I could see the longing in his eyes, but I think he's very happy because then I refurbished it and made it all nice again. And yeah, so that one's probably my favorite at this point.
And the Fender, why did you choose the Fiesta Red one? Because it only comes in 2 colors.
Yeah.
And I got to credit Sean for this guitar research. So how come you chose Fiesta Red?
So that one, actually, that was the only one in the shop at the time. It's a 2004 model, I think. So they are limited, and I think they just started making them again, actually, now, last year. But they didn't make them for a good 20 years. So that was the only one in the shop at Ronnie's shop. And so that's basically the reason I bought it. I just thought it looked amazing. It looks like a Mustang and a Jaguar. And I just thought it looks incredible. And it says like designed by Kurt Cobain on the back of the headstock. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. Also, it's a Japanese Fender, as far as I know, which I love the Japanese Fenders. And yeah, so that's the basic reason I chose that guitar. Actually, at a gig 2 years back, I was gigging with Jacques Moelman, and he said he thinks it might be his because at the same time he sold his at Ronnie's All Bang and Strum. And yeah, so we have a guess that it might be his old Jagstang.
What? That's wild.
Crazy.
Do you think that when you inherit an instrument or maybe you thrift it, do you think it retains like an energetic history of the people that have played it or something like that?
I do feel like older guitars sound better. I don't know if it's just in your mind, but to me, I know like there is science behind the fact that like the wood ages and that sort of thing, and that makes sense. But there is a vibe about a guitar that is slightly dinged up and that has its own character and stuff. There's some sort of a soul to the instrument that I think isn't easy to explain, but it does like come up every now and then.
I would love to know about what it was like recording, because you have a team that I think serves you and your music so well. So I want to know who they are and how you work with them.
Amazing. So when COVID started, I'd over the years built up lots of equipment and Never really used it. I really always have had a fascination with the idea of recording myself. I think this stems from listening to Damien Rice and that album of his, Oh, he recorded by himself. So that whole idea and the fact that Ben Howard did the same thing, and like all of these like influences of mine were doing this home recording thing. So I built up the equipment, never used it, and then when COVID struck, I obviously had to start recording somewhere. I didn't have a studio to go to, and at that point, obviously, cash flow wasn't great. So I just started recording at home, and that's when I started also working with Tick Tick Bang, the distribution label I'm signed with, and they introduced me to a couple of producers. We went through one or two that I just didn't gel with, and then eventually I landed in the capable hands of Brent Quinton and Brian O'Shea. Brent is in KZN actually, and he is absolutely amazing. I really love working with him. We've worked together on the last two EPs, so I track everything at my place and then send off to him, and he helps with some of the programming on the drums and adds some layers if necessary. Otherwise, he just mixes for me. And I'll sort of do a rough mix so that he gets this sort of idea of what kind of vibe I'm going for, and then he'll mix from scratch from that sort of reference. And then after that, the song goes to Rogan Kelsey, who is known for his incredible masters. So yeah, that's sort of the team. It's a very tiny team, but I love working with them. Obviously, my wife Anya does most of the backing vocals in the songs as well.
Last question on my side.
Mm.
In mentioning the EP, you said that they're mostly going to be new songs. But I'd like to know, are we ever going to get an official release of songs like When You Move, Hometown, Nostalgia, and Typical Scum of the Earth?
How do you know about When You Move? Oh my goodness, did I post that on Instagram or something?
Probably, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, so this is the like massive dilemma for me is I write a lot, and I have probably about, I think I worked it out the other day, like 75 songs, and I think about 25 or 30 of them are released. So there are so many songs that just don't make the cut all the time, and I'm one of those people who just wants to get them all out. There's a part of me that just like wants to stop writing and recording and just record all those and just put them out. But yeah, it comes down to hard decisions in the end, and you just have to sort of choose which ones you think stand out and which ones you really want to have on the EPs. And so I can't give you a hard yes or no. It could be that they might resurface someday and be featured on an EP or something, or maybe on an album, or maybe we'll do live versions of them or something. We'll see. But I can't give you a hard yes or no.
You could even go the Damien Rice route and do a B-sides.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, guys. So it would seem that we've come to the end as far as time is concerned. So this is generally the part of the episode where we just firstly thank you for just joining, having this conversation with us. Highly appreciate it. I've learned a lot. I hope everyone else that's listening to this, has learned a lot as well. Muse has learned a lot. And you've just been really amazing, bro. Like, you're really good at this. So, for anyone that wants to maybe reach out to you, what are your handles and where can we also find some of your music as well?
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me. It's such a nice organic chat and just like awesome to speak to you two and to get to know you a little bit better. You can find me on social media at Werner Bekker Music. That's Werner with a W. That's the one people always get wrong. And Bekker with a double K. I say it multiple different ways, but okay, it's the same on all platforms, just Werner Bekker Music. If you're very English, it's Werner. And if you're very Afrikaans, it's Werner. Some people think it's Werner or like Werner or Vernon. It's Werner. It's like the good old German name.
Hey, that is perfect, bro. And obviously, as well, I want to give a huge shout out and just thank you to Genevieve as well, because, we've been communicating and she's part of the reason as well, while we actually here. So thank you so much, Genevieve, for organizing. And also want to give a huge shout out to all the people you mentioned. Sean, coming through with that, guitar sort of content in the episode. I want to give a shout out to Jacques, who possibly owned your guitar, who's also been a guest on the show. I want to give a shout out to your wife. I want to give a shout out to just everyone who's, played a part in us all being here eventually. And obviously for all things Sludge Underground, check out our websites, www.sludgeunderground.com. And that's pretty much where you're going to get the episode. What song of yours should we close out with, bro? Like, what's your absolute favorite?
I would say close out with Run. At this point, it's my favorite.
So we're about to close out with Run. And it's been a really epic episode. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, it's bye for now.
Run, run, run as fast as you can. Run from that woman, young man. Cognition fighting prowess. For the dark soul taking God is here for me. Put on your shoes, little one. Don't you see what you've done? You dipped your finger in the pan when none of it was yours, little man. Oh, you dipped your finger in the pan when none of it was yours, little man. Sensitive boys hard to find these days, and I know I'm one of them, man. I know you're alone and getting lonelier each day, but I know I'm not him, I'm not him. Each time she turns on the light, shining green on heartstrings, I fight like moth drawn to a flame. Her love is vain. Oh, and lust is a thing. Oh, and lust, I cannot trust. Oh, and lust is a thing. Oh, and lust, I cannot